The Australian-born actor was found naked in his bedroom Tuesday afternoon.
Investigators confirming tonight that they had found as many as a half dozen prescription medications inside his apartment used to treat everything from insomnia to anxiety and other conditions. And they say a rolled-up $20 bill was not used to.
Tests showed no traces of residue. An autopsy on Ledger's body proved inconclusive.
The hidden room in Heath Ledger's house was finally opened, and what they found wasn't what anyone expected. 6 weeks of audio recordings, all the same laugh, over and over, until his neighbors complained about the disturbing sounds. But that laugh wasn't just for a movie role. It was becoming who he was. The diary they found told a different story. Pages of sketches that got darker with each entry. Comic book panels torn and glued like a madman's vision board.
So this was the diary. You know, he pretty well locked himself up in a hotel in his apartment for a month or so to sort of.
His housekeeper had been finding clown dolls around the apartment for weeks. She thought it was just research. She had no idea Heath was losing himself.
There was a rolled-up $20 bill found. The nature of the way the bill was folded might indicate that possible use for.
The prescription bottles weren't the real evidence. The real horror was discovering that Heath hadn't been acting for months. He had created a character so terrifying, so real, that it refused to let him go. The Joker wasn't just a role Heath Ledger played. In his final months, the Joker was playing him. So what exactly happened? When detectives pushed open the door to Heath Ledger's Manhattan apartment on January 22, 2008, they weren't prepared for what they'd find. 6 different prescription bottles scattered across surfaces, a rolled-up $20 bill lying next to his bed, anti-anxiety medications, sleeping pills, painkillers from Europe.
Investigators confirming tonight that they had found as many as a half dozen prescription medications inside his apartment used to treat everything from insomnia to anxiety and other conditions. And they say a rolled-up $20 bill was not used to.
But that was just the beginning. What they discovered in the following hours would reveal the terrifying obsession that consumed Heath Ledger's final months. Comic book pages torn and taped to walls, notebooks filled with disturbing sketches, clown dolls positioned throughout the apartment like silent witnesses, and in the center of it all, a diary that ended with 2 words written in red.
So this was the diary. You know, he pretty well locked himself up in a hotel in his apartment for a month or so to sort of.
Bye-bye. The housekeeper had found him first. She'd gone into his bedroom at 1 p.m. to change a light bulb, saw him sleeping, heard him snoring. Everything seemed normal. By 2:45 p.m., when massage therapist Diana Wolozin arrived for their appointment, Heath Ledger was already dead. Wolozin knocked. No answer. She tried calling him. Nothing. When she finally entered the bedroom, she found him face down at the foot of his bed, cold to the touch. In her panic, she didn't call 911 first. She called Mary Kate Olsen. Olsen said she'd send her private security. Only then did Wolozin realize Heath might actually be dead. The paramedics arrived minutes later. They moved his body to the floor, used a defibrillator, tried CPR. Nothing worked. Heath Ledger was pronounced dead at 3:36 p.m. Heath Andrew Ledger was born April 4th, 1979 in Perth, Western Australia. His mother Sally taught French. His father Kim worked as a mining engineer and raced cars on weekends. Heath and his sister Kate were named after characters from Wuthering Heights, a novel their mother loved. By the time Heath was 10, he was already acting in school plays. He also took an early interest in choreography, inspired by Gene Kelly. Even then, he didn't think acting would become his future. He once said he wasn't the kind of kid who always knew what he wanted to be. At 16, Heath had to choose between cooking or drama as a school elective. He picked drama only because cooking didn't interest him. That small choice ended up shaping everything that came next. He started taking acting more seriously. By the end of that year, he was confident enough to take his graduation exams early and leave school ahead of schedule. Instead of going to university, he enrolled briefly at Glendon Grammar School in Melbourne. They had strong drama programs, and for a while, he tried to focus on acting in a structured way. But in 1996, he decided to leave formal education behind. He didn't want to study acting anymore. He wanted to live it. At 17, Heath and his best friend Trevor DiCarlo packed up their car car and left Perth for Sydney. It was a drive of over 4,000 kilometers across the country. They had almost no money. When they reached Sydney, Heath had just 69 cents in his pocket. That moment became a symbol of how little he started with. He believed Sydney was where actors got their big break, so he threw himself into auditions. He had no agent and no connections. Most of the time, he was rejected, but he kept trying everything he could. That period of struggle helped shape his acting style. He knew what it felt like to be on the outside. Heath Ledger didn't ease into acting. He went straight for something bold. In 1996, he had a choice between two roles in an Australian series called Sweat. One was a swimmer, the other was Snowy Bowles, a gay cyclist. Ledger picked the cyclist without hesitation. He believed if he wanted to stand out, he had to take on roles that weren't safe or predictable. Sweat was shot in Perth and ran for 26 episodes. It was his first regular TV role. It also gave an early glimpse of his willingness to take risks. But the series came with challenges. Years later, when it aired in the UK, every scene that showed or even hinted at Snowy's was cut. What was left barely made sense. Even before that, Ledger had already struggled through the role. In a 2000 interview, he admitted he felt completely lost during filming. He didn't know how to move, didn't know what to do with his hands. He was ready to walk away from acting altogether. He didn't walk away. Instead, he kept moving. He landed a short role on Home and Away, one of Australia's longest-running soaps. He played a laid-back surfer who got involved in a Summer Bay romance. It wasn't a big part, but it mattered. It gave him more screen time, more experience, and most importantly, it kept him on the path. Around the same time, he also appeared in another series called Ship to Shore. These small steps added up. The real breakthrough came in 1999 with Two Hands.
Hey, what's it like out there?
I don't know. Less buildings, more cows.
Two Hands was a crime comedy set in Sydney. Ledger played Jimmy, a teenager who loses $10,000 that belongs to a gangster. What followed was fast, chaotic, and tense. Critics loved it. They called it the Australian Goodfellas. It won Best Film at the Australian Film Institute Awards, and Ledger earned his first nomination for Best Actor. Reviewers praised how fast the story moved and how authentic the characters felt. His performance stood out. It was raw, confident, funny when it needed to be, and dangerous when it had to be. Co-stars like Rose Byrne and Brian Brown added to the energy, but it was Ledger's presence that carried the film. Two Hands wasn't just a success in Australia, it also got him noticed abroad. It was invited to the Sundance Film Festival, and that opened new doors. But before Two Hands changed things, Ledger had already made another bold move. Back in 1997, he took on a lead role in Roar, a fantasy series set in ancient Ireland. He played Connor, a young Celtic prince leading tribes against Roman invaders. It was an ambitious show created by Sean Cassidy and Ron Koslow, right after their hits like Xena and Hercules. Ledger acted alongside Vera Farmiga, who was also just starting out. The sets were elaborate, the costumes were detailed, the world they built looked good on screen. But it couldn't compete with shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. After 8 episodes, Roar was canceled. 5 more episodes sat unaired until years later. Even though it didn't last, Roar turned out to be exactly what Ledger needed. He took his scenes from that show, cut together a demo reel, and flew to Los Angeles. He used those clips in early auditions, and that reel opened the right doors. When Heath Ledger walked into the audition room for 10 Things I Hate About You, he was just 20 years old. He thought he was a terrible auditioner. The director took one look at him and said, "If this guy can read, he's hired." Ledger got the part. He played Patrick Verona, a laid-back rebel in a high school reimagining of Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew. The scene that changed everything for him was simple. He danced through the bleachers singing "Can't Take My Eyes Off You" with a mischievous grin and perfect timing. It became an instant classic. The film made over 4 times its budget, and overnight, Ledger became a name in Hollywood. He didn't hide his accent or smooth out his edges. That was part of his charm. He felt real, and he brought humor and warmth to a role that could have been just another cliché. But he didn't want to be the next teen heartthrob. Hollywood tried to lock him into that image. Offers came in, one after another, all for the same kind of role. He turned down everything. He almost flew back to Australia for good. Then came a role that changed the trajectory again. In The Patriot, he played Gabriel Martin, the oldest son of Mel Gibson's character, a young man who joins the fight in the American Revolution. The film was massive. a $110 million production shot on location in South Carolina. Uniforms were studied at the Smithsonian to get the details right. It opened wide and made over $200 million globally. Ledger was just 21, but he wasn't the pretty high school rebel anymore. He was fighting for a cause, showing fear, showing passion. He held his own next to Gibson, who had already been in the game for decades. That gave him credibility and made people take him seriously. Then came A Knight's Tale, a medieval adventure but with rock music and swagger. Ledger played William Thatcher, a squire who pretends to be a nobleman so he can compete in jousting tournaments. The film opens with Queen's We Will Rock You and crowd stomps that feel more like a concert than a period film. It should have been ridiculous, but it worked. The story moved fast, the characters were fun. Ledger's performance was loose and joyful. In one scene, he dances at a formal banquet. The music shifts mid-scene from medieval strings to David Bowie's Golden Years. That moment captured exactly what the film was, something old made entirely new. Heath Ledger started as a teen heartthrob, but by 2001, he was ready for something more serious. That year, he played Sonny Grotowski in Monsters Ball, a prison guard stuck in a family full of hate. His father, Hank, played by Billy Bob Thornton, and his grandfather, Buck, played by Peter Boyle, were both openly racist. Sonny didn't follow their path. He was kind to his black neighbor, Ryrus Cooper, played by Mos Def. He showed respect, he showed warmth, and his family hated him for it. They called him weak. They told him straight up, "We hate you." Ledger carried all that pain in silence. There's a scene where Sonny breaks down and ends his own life. It shocked audiences. It felt real, and it proved that Ledger could handle deep emotional roles. In 2003, he returned to Australia to play Ned Kelly in a film directed by Gregor Jordan.
My name's Ned Kelly. Pleased to meet you.
Hello, Ned.
Ned was a real man born in December 1854 and executed on November 11, 1880. He was seen by some as a criminal and by others as a hero who stood up against the British. Ledger grew a thick beard for the role and changed the way he moved and spoke. He made Ned feel tired but strong, angry but thoughtful. The film showed his journey from a poor boy to the leader of a gang who wore homemade armor during their final shootout in Glenrowan. Ledger captured every side of him, the violence and the hope. Also in 2003, Heath Ledger was suggested for the role of Ennis Del Mar in Brokeback Mountain. The screenwriters Diana Ossana and Larry McMurtry had seen him in Monsters Ball and believed he had the right depth, but the studio didn't agree at first. They thought he wasn't masculine enough. Many actors had already turned down the role, worried about how it would affect their image. But when Ledger read the script, everything changed. He saw how powerful the story was. He called it the best script he had ever read. He didn't wait to be offered the part. He asked for it. Ledger wanted to play Ennis, not Jack. He felt closer to Ennis's silence, to the way the character kept everything inside. He said the role would demand more from him than anything else before. Ennis was tough and closed off. Ledger saw that as a challenge, and he liked that the story hadn't been told before. To become Ennis, Ledger changed everything about how he moved and spoke. He said he wanted Ennis to feel like a clenched fist. His voice, his mouth, even the way he stood, all of it had to feel tight. He studied the Wyoming accent and added what he called a splash of Texas. Then he practiced until it felt natural. Ledger had grown up around horses, so the physical work felt familiar, but he still researched and prepared for months. He created a way of walking that felt slow and heavy. It showed how much the character kept buried inside. He also thought about how Ennis would age over the years. You can see it across the film. His face gets rougher, his posture changes. When Brokeback Mountain was released in December 2005, some people called it the gay cowboy movie. That could have made it fail, but it didn't. It earned over $178 million worldwide and got 8 Oscar nominations. Ledger stayed serious about the role from start to finish. When an interviewer asked how he felt about people calling the film disgusting, Ledger said it was immature and sad. Jake Gyllenhaal later said Ledger wouldn't even joke about the story. If someone tried, Ledger would shut it down. In early 2006, at just 26 years old, Heath Ledger was nominated for Best Actor at the Academy Awards. That made him the 9th youngest nominee in that category at the time. The New York Times compared his performance to legends like Marlon Brando and Sean Penn. After that, Ledger wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was chasing roles that mattered. In 2005, he played Skip Engblom in Lords of Dogtown. Skip owned a surf shop in Venice Beach and helped form the famous Z-Boys skate team in the 1970s. Ledger looked completely different. Long, messy blonde hair, a deep tan, and slurred speech from years in the sun. He even squinted constantly, like someone who had never worn sunglasses. He stayed in character between takes. He never dropped the voice, not even at lunch. Director Catherine Hardwicke said Ledger acted like Skip off camera too. When the real Skip saw Ledger on set, he was shocked. He said it felt like looking at a version of himself that had gone too far. Ledger didn't just act, he became the person. In 2006, he took on his most difficult role yet in Candy, playing Dan, a addicted poet. To prepare, Ledger lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. He studied how was used and learned how to fake it the right way. His skin looked sick. His body looked weak. The film showed Dan and his partner Candy as they fall in love, fall into addiction, and fall apart. Ledger's performance during withdrawal scenes was painful to watch. He shook, he cried, he collapsed, and none of it felt fake. Meanwhile, Heath met Naomi Watts in 2002 while filming Ned Kelly. Despite their age gap, he was 23, she was 34, they connected immediately. Their relationship lasted almost 2 years before they broke up in 2004. When Heath died, Naomi was heartbroken, believing the world had lost a rare talent. In 2004, Heath went to Calgary to film Brokeback Mountain. That's where he met Michelle Williams. Jake Gyllenhaal remembered them making googly eyes during rehearsal. The relationship moved fast. Within months, they were engaged. Their daughter, Matilda Rose Ledger, was born on October 28, 2005. Heath said becoming a dad was the most important thing in his life. Before that, he felt like he was drifting. But in September 2007, things fell apart. There were different stories about why. One said it was because of Heath's use. A source told People magazine that Michelle had taken him to Promises Rehab Center in March 2006 when Matilda was only 5 months old. He refused to go in, promising to get clean on his own. After they split, Michelle reportedly asked tests before he could see Matilda. Then came the role that would consume him completely. Heath Ledger's version of the Joker in The Dark Knight was unlike anything audiences had seen before. Christopher Nolan wanted a terrorist without a cause, a man whose only goal was to destroy order. Ledger's Joker wanted chaos for its own sake.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the neck. See?
He filled notebooks with the Joker's thoughts. He spoke in the Joker's voice for hours. He practiced laughs in the middle of the night. He stayed up watching disturbing footage and drew images that became known as the Joker Diary. The diary contained images of clowns in hospitals, comic panels from old Joker issues. On the last page, in large red letters, he wrote, "Bye-bye." Ledger studied ventriloquist dummies to make his voice feel detached from his body. With coach Jerry Grenell, he created 3 distinct laughs. For the appearance, Christopher Nolan gave him Francis Bacon's paintings. During 3-hour makeup sessions, Ledger moved his face constantly while makeup was applied, making the white paint crack naturally. Even when he wasn't needed on set, he showed up in full costume, in full character. Michael Caine once forgot his lines after seeing Ledger in makeup for the first time. But off camera, Ledger's mood was low. He missed his daughter deeply. The insomnia worsened. He began relying more on prescription medications. His mind wouldn't slow down. Heath was planning to head back to New York, but his acting coach and close friend Jerry Grenell saw how much he was struggling and tried to change his mind. Heath looked tired, both mentally and physically, like he was carrying too much at once. Grenell begged him to come to Dublin instead, to take a break and recover. "Come to Dublin, you're not well," he told him. For a moment, Heath seemed unsure. He paused, thought about it. Grenell could see he was considering it. But then Heath shook his head and said, No, I got to go to New York. There's stuff I need to do." It was firm, like something he had already convinced himself was necessary. Grenell still thinks about that moment. He believes it was a turning point, maybe the last one. The final conversations Heath had with his family were quiet and ordinary, which makes them even harder to forget. He messaged his sister Kate on chat, something they did all the time, and told her he was going out to buy some cigarettes. She responded with a joke, "Fags," because they used to trade bad puns for fun. That was the last message they exchanged. On the phone earlier that day, she'd warned him not to mix medications. He brushed it off with the familiar answer, Katie, I'll be fine." They laughed together. She was cooking dinner. The call ended with him saying he'd ring her in the morning. She told him she loved him, and that was it. There were disturbing details about Heath's final months. According to a lawsuit filed by a People magazine reporter, paparazzi had manipulated Heath into doing on film at the Chateau Marmont Hotel. Photographers Darren Banks and Eric Munn had invited Heath to her hotel room after a Screen Actors Guild award party, concealing their true professions. In the hotel room, they gave Heath allegedly bought with Splash News money. When Heath discovered the men were paparazzi and that Eric Munn was secretly filming from the balcony, he became angry. For nearly 7 hours, Munn kept giving Heath more to calm him down. At least once an hour, for nearly 7 hours, Mr. Ledger would remember that he had been videotaped and got upset all over again. After Heath's death, Entertainment Tonight ran the footage, calling it the Heath Ledger tape. Splash allegedly sold the video worldwide, making over $1 million. When police entered Heath's Manhattan apartment on January 22, 2008, they found something that felt less like a living space and more like a carefully built world. Comic books, notebooks, clown figures, and research materials were arranged throughout the loft. Recordings of his voice were scattered across the room. Hours of him testing pitches, practicing laughs, pushing himself deeper into character. In bed with him was the screenplay for Blink, a film he was preparing to star in. On the nightstand was Malcolm Gladwell's book. Director Stephen Gaghan got the call while waiting at an airport. Heath's father had found Gaghan's phone number written on the script cover. Gaghan collapsed right there on the floor when he heard the news. The cause of death was acute intoxication from 6 prescription 2 painkillers, 2 anti-anxiety medications, and 2 sleep aids. None were taken in excessive amounts, but the mix was dangerous. The worked against his nervous system, slowing his breathing until his body simply shut down. Heath Ledger spent 6 weeks in a small hotel room staring at the wall, practicing his Joker laugh. The hidden room wasn't a physical space. It was the darkness inside Heath Ledger's mind, where the Joker lived and grew and eventually took over. The boy from Perth who started with 69 cents had given everything to his craft. In the end, it was everything, including his life. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.